Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse, episode 342. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Matt.
Hey, it's a good week for comics. Well, it's a good week to be a DC fan, I would say.
Yeah, I was going to say, Matt, I was like, almost no comics like this week. What the hell are you talking about?
We'll talk about it when we get to the news, but it was a good week for shops. I will say that much.
Oh, for sure. Well,
Yes.
okay. Now, I get what you're saying. Some books were selling out because of some announcements we'll get to in the news.
Yes.
But for
That's what I meant by it's just a good week for comics.
For new comics coming out, though, it was a quiet week.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually a bad week. It was just a quiet week.
No, I meant comics in the bigger sense and as a whole at DC. So.
And the more metaphysical sense.
Yes.
Very good. This is a DC Comics podcast. We get together and we talk about the books we read this week, which this week, brace yourselves for this list. We have The Flash, 1 Minute War Special, and we have DC Power, a celebration. And then that's pretty much it. Although, because obviously it's so late, I did do both my Patreon books this week. So I've got American Vampire issue 29, and kicking off my next run that I'm doing, sort of replacing Animal Man, which was the previous slot. I'll be kicking off Batman and the Outsiders, although that starts with a story from The Brave and the Bold issue 200, which is what I'm talking about today. So that's exciting. A fun new run that I've not read before. So
Is that Len Wein?
No, it's Mike Barr and Jim Aparo. I thought
Okay.
I don't have it in front of me right now. I'll tell you later, but I want to say that's who it was. So
Cool.
But yeah, so that's what's coming up. But luckily, they did give us some big news. Now, normally week fives, because this is a week 5 week, you know. If you're familiar with the comic schedule, you know what I mean by that is that the books are coming out every Tuesday, so they schedule for 4 weeks per month. But every few months, there's a 5th week, and you'll get a few specials or annuals, and that's kind of it. Because news tends to be tied more to solicits, we don't usually get a lot of news to sort of like help fill in that week a little bit. But luckily this week we did get some big news for movies and TV stuff, so we will talk about that. But there's plenty of time this week, Matt, for a ComiXology top 10.
That's not what I thought you were going to say. That's why I agreed.
And although, to be honest, because so few books came out, particularly from DC this week, the Tuesday top 10 is
dire.
I mean, it's even technically technically there's some trades that came out from random places that make up to a 10, but I mean, it's, you know, well, we'll get into it, Matt. What do you think number 1 is for Tuesday from ComiXology as of right now?
I mean, I want to say that it's the 1 Minute War special, but it's probably going to be the Power, DC Power Celebration 1.
It's neither of those.
Really? It's Lazarus Planet, isn't it?
It's the Lazarus Planet book.
I was thinking more digitally then, because I feel like these digital books these bigger books are primed for digital.
Here's a slight note on, I think both Power and then the Romance Anthology, which neither of us wanted to read.
Yeah.
I believe both of those went straight up on DC Infinite.
Oh, wow.
So their digital sales, you know, regardless of what they might have been, might be diminished because they were available if you have that service.
Right. Okay.
So
I know that's what I picked those up digitally because I'm running out of room. So any of these bigger books I get digitally. So I just thought maybe that's what other people were thinking. So
they're also specials though, which I think some people assume are going to be valuable at some point because they're effectively issue 1s, which, you know.
Yeah, I mean, but still,
it's a technicality, but yeah. But yeah, number 1's Lazarus Planet, whatever that was called this week.
Lazarus Planet Legends Reborn number 1.
There you go. The title's too long for my Amazon sales chart. Number 2 was The Flash, 1 Minute War.
Okay.
Special. Number 3 was DC Power Celebration. Number 4 was Batman Legends of Gotham, and number 5 was DC's Harley Quinn Romances. And that's all the DC books. So what's after number 5, you say? Number 6 is a Critical Role trade.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
And then number 7 is a Cyberpunk 2077 trade. And then number 8 is Murder Inc. Volume 1 by Bendis.
Yeah, that's a reprint, I think.
Yeah, and then number 9 is Tales from Harrow County by Cullen Bunn. And then number 10 is The Ward, Welcome to the Madhouse, which is also a trade. So yeah,
is that by John Carpenter? Doesn't he have a movie called The Ward?
He has a movie called The Ward, but no, it's by Kevin Scott.
Okay.
But it's so really weird top 10 for Tuesday because DC only released 5 books. But at least all 5 books were above the random trades, because it'd be worrying if they weren't.
Yeah, for sure.
For obvious reasons. All right, looking at Wednesday then for the rest of the comic book industry, and Marvel's schedule's a lot more like unstructured, so they tend to not necessarily have the quiet week 5s because they just kind of like schedule for each month kind of individually anyway. So what do you think number 1 is?
I'm looking at what League of Comic Geeks has, and I know that's a little bit different what people are pulling, so I don't think it's what's in the top spot there. I'm gonna go out on a limb and the first X book that I see, and that is X-Force 37.
No, number 1 is Dark Web Finale, issue 1.
Oh, that's on the one below. Damn it.
Yeah, so number 2 is Scarlet Witch, issue 2.
Wow.
Number 3 is Legion of X, issue 10. Number 4 is X-Force, issue 37. So, has Percy always been on that? Or is it?
Yes.
Yeah, he's
well,
always
at
been
least
on.
for a hot minute. Percy's been on.
Avengers 65 is number 5. And we know Aaron's run's wrapping up soon because I think they've already announced the next Avengers team. Number 6 is Moon Knight issue 20. Number 7 is Silver Surfer Ghostlight. Number 8 is Venom issue 16. Number 9, we're out of Marvel and into some indie stuff. We have Almighty issue 1 by Edward LaRocque and maybe LaRoche. I'm going super Scottish because I always assume it's a hard cha rather than a soft cha, but you know. So that's a new book. And then number 10, going elsewhere, we have Star Trek issue 4. So
right,
bit of Trek in the top 10. And then there's some more Marvel. You know, so some of the indie books will beat some of the Marvel. So there's like a Miles Morales Spider-Man and a Captain America book and stuff underneath that. But yeah, so yeah, week 5s are always a bit strange, especially for the DC day because DC don't really plan a lot for them. So
yeah, it's an Image. So that was Almighty is an Image number 1.
Yes.
So that makes sense. It's a 5 issue. Apparently it's the other. It says Mad Max Fury Road style action, combined with the mutated horror of annihilation in this original sci-fi fantasy epic. So take 2 things and smash them together, I guess.
Okay. Well, that wraps up the top 10, and of course, I did say there was a lot of news this week, so we will get into it. And it was obviously the kind of expected, there have been teases that James Gunn and Peter Safran were going to be making their announcements of what their slate is for DC movies and TV in the next few years. And it's looking like this is the 2024 to 2026 kind of thing, and they're calling this Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters. So obviously the best thing to compare that to would be like a phase of Marvel. This is like their phase 1, although it's not necessarily an origin phase because they're kind of like jumping in where all these characters are either established, well, not all of them, but some of the big ones are already established. So we're just going to go through the projects here that they've announced, and we'll talk about them a little bit. It mixes movies and TV. It's not like all the movies are first and the TV second. I don't know why they're in this order, but we'll just go in the order they're in the article.
So did you watch the video from Gunn, or did you just read the article?
I just read the article.
All right, so I watched the video from Gunn, and it was very informative in that the stuff that he added his commentary to these. So
I've got there's some quotes from him for each of the
gotcha,
because there's not descriptions per se, but it's just like quotes from what he said about them.
Okay.
So all right, so first up, animated TV show called Creature Commandos, which is definitely, because one of the things they were saying get into this is that they want to use the big sort of like tentpole characters, which is basically the Trinity,
right, to
prop up some weirder and smaller characters, and you can kind of see that in both the movie side and the TV side. There's some bigger names in both, and then there's some weirder names. But Creature Commandos is obviously one of the weirder, smaller properties. Apparently this has been written by Gunn, and he's finished writing it. Creatures Commandos is comprised of military superhumans, including a human leader, a werewolf, a vampire, Frankenstein's monster, which I assume is just the same Frankenstein as Agent of Shade.
That's what I would assume.
Yeah. And a Gargan. don't forget the Gargan.
Yes.
It's very important. And one of the characters in this is Weasel, which was in Gunn's Suicide Squad movies. So there's a little bit of this definitely feels like a very James Gunn thing. A group of weird characters. I feel like his sense of humor will work well with this group.
Yeah, it's very B movie ish, right?
Yeah.
When I think of his early work, right before Guardians, it always had a B movie quality to it. The image that they have here also has GI Robot and someone that looks like Dr. Phosphorus. So seems like it's going to be a varied cast from, our usual Creature Commandos. But he also had mentioned in his video that what they want is they want a synergy between all these projects. And so the voice cast will also be the live action cast when these guys show up. Somewhere in live action.
Should they show up?
Yes, should they show up?
Show up? So you've got that, right? So that's first up. I don't have too much to say about that. It's an animated show. It feels like it'll probably be like maybe a lot of fun, but I imagine probably not as essential as some of the other things, because they are saying this is chapter 1, Gods and Monsters, this slate, and that would suggest that there is a plan, and they say there's an overall story they're telling, and they even point out one of the things that's more important to the overall story later on. So we'll get into that. Next up, another show is Waller. This one was kind of already known about. This is a spin-off of Peacemaker. The interesting thing about this one, and I talked to Connor about all this in the almost cancelled TV news yesterday, so I'm repeating a lot of what I said there.
There you go.
But Waller is kind of like this weird thing where, because James Gunn's writing a Superman movie, more than that in a second, he's not got time to do Peacemaker Season 2 just now, which has been greenlit. So Waller's kind of like, he's setting that up as kind of like the in-between. It's like so that he can do something related to Peacemaker before he's ready to have the time for Peacemaker. And the funny thing is that probably got renewed before he got this gig. So it's like, when will he have the time for Peacemaker Season 2? Who knows? But yeah, so obviously this is going to be Viola Davis. It's going to, that's not really even much. It's Waller. She's probably going to be controlling some supervillains, is my guess, because that tends to be her thing.
I mean, probably a hint of Suicide Squad in here, right?
I would imagine so.
But it's also being written by Crystal Henry, who did Watchmen, the HBO series, and then Jeremy Carver, who is the creator of Doom Patrol.
Oh, I'm glad you knew that, because I saw the name there and I saw it said Watchmen, but when I read it yesterday, I wasn't sure if it meant the show or the movie.
Yeah. It was the show. I don't know if she was a showrunner or one of the main writers, but yeah.
She wasn't the main showrunner, because the main showrunner was Damon Lindelof.
That's right. So definitely one of the lead writers on there. And for as much as I enjoyed Watchmen, a show that I did not think I was going to enjoy.
Oh, it was very good. It was very good.
So this makes me excited. I need to go and finish Peacemaker. I just started it, and
I've got, I think, 2 episodes left, but it's really entertaining. It's funny, it's
yes, it's very entertaining, but it was just at a point we're trying to keep up and not get spoiled by things, and just because people have to have like the greatest opinions about everything as soon as it comes out, and it's overwhelming. So I'll get back to it.
I mean, I do.
Not when I say you're quiet about it, but the rest of the internet. It's like this Last of Us.
I was just trying to crack a joke. That's all. Peace.
I just like nothing against the Last of Us show. I'm sure that episode is great. However, the amount of people that I've seen says, "Oh my god, it's the greatest, the greatest episode in the history of TV ever." I'm like, what? It's okay to like things, and it doesn't have to be the best thing ever. It puts a distaste in it, because now like everything's up here. And
you do have a problem though when something's popular. You kind of try to rebel against it, which is stupid, because Last of Us is fantastic and you should watch it.
I will watch Last of Us, but I'm going to watch it when it's all out, like I did with White Lotus, right? I'm not going to do the week-to-week thing, but it would just be nice to know, like, like I've seen you talk about how good it is. You're like, as far as adaptations go, this is they're doing things right. You're also not out there doing the hyperbolic greatest thing in the history of ever, I mean,
I very rarely say things like that.
Yes. So It's never you. Like, especially if you're measured on something, I'm actually more key to check it out. Or if you really dislike something, I'm going to be like, oh, what didn't he like in this? And I get curious, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you're more just kind of measured and be like, yeah, it was okay, I'm more prone to watch it.
You're more prone to watch something when I'm lukewarm on it. That's
yeah,
very,
yes, because that's kind of your de facto setting, Pete.
but
You know,
that's
so,
silly. Surely, if I'm praising something, it must be great, and therefore you have to see it.
I still haven't seen Avatar, and I know you loved it, so that's all I'll say.
Just go watch Avatar 2, right? With your help, Matt, it might cross $2.5 billion.
Yeah, that's why I haven't gone yet, because I don't want to take part in that.
Go watch Avatar 2. Anyway, so that's Waller. Out of the movies, well, and again, it's jumping between them. This is the first movie. Is Superman Legacy, and this is quoted as really the start of this DCU. It's already announced with Gunn writing, no director attached. Gunn could end up directing it. What I'll be interested to hear from like Gunn writing this is that I don't necessarily associate Gunn's writing style with necessarily being applicable to Superman, but I will say this. This quote here is really interesting. It's not an origin story. It focuses on Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. He is the embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way. He's kindness in a world that thinks kindness is old-fashioned. That last part in particular is by far the most interesting thing they could have said about making a Superman movie. It is shocking to me that we have not had a Superman story either in movie or really TV, right? And I've not watched season 2 of Superman alone, so maybe it did something with it, but I doubt it. That deals with the fact that Superman is this earnest goody two shoes and tries to be that in a world that is cynical and cold, and he's trying to bring some light to it.
Right.
There's potential there.
Yeah. As a Superman fan, I like everything that I hear there. So, it seems like Gunn really does understand the character, because that's what he's leading with, is the fact that he kind of is old-fashioned, and that's why he, to me, that's what makes Superman work, is that he's not the cynical guy, and that's what always rubbed me the wrong way in the other movies, is, he was just so cold and, like, distant, and I didn't feel the warmth to Superman. Here, just with that, the whole, he's kindness in a world that thinks kindness is old-fashioned. Superman persists. That's what I like.
Yeah. So, yeah, promising. What they did say there's going to be some inspiration from All-Star Superman, which I'm going to assume is not necessarily so much plot, but more so just tone, feel, kind of the vibe it's going for.
I mean, it is called Legacy, which makes me wonder why you would start with that. Like, is this his Kryptonian legacy? Is this his Earth legacy? Is it being, the last son or whatever? Or is it like with All-Star? Are these like kind of like the last acts or whatever of Superman?
Well, definitely not, because they opened with this as a young Superman.
Oh, is that what this says?
Yeah, it's a young Superman. Oh.
Well, then it's definitely not that.
Yeah, which is why I'm saying it's definitely not just doing the plot of All-Star Superman.
Of course.
So there you go. That's the Superman Legacy movie. Over to TV next is Lanterns, HBO Max show. Obviously, it's a Green Lantern show. Our vision for this is True Detective, Saffron said. It's going to be Hal and Jon Stewart. It is a terrestrial show. And it plays a big part in the main story that they're telling across the film and TV shared universe, which I was theorizing yesterday might mean that whatever, Hal and John are investigating, that it might set up whoever the main villain is for the eventual, Chapter 2's big Justice League team-up movie or whatever it is.
Right. It makes me think that it's not Darkseid, but I also don't have any other options. You know?
It could be. Yeah, it could be Darkseid still, because if they're investigating stuff, maybe it's the influence of some dark apocalypse energy on some people on Earth or something like that.
Right.
But given Darkseid was kind of teased in the last movies, and obviously, the less we sort of think about them, the better for a while. I imagine maybe they'll go a different route.
Yeah, which I like, because that means there's some surprise at play here. And just thinking about Green Lanterns or Green Lantern itself, it made me think of Blackest Night or whatever, of like Necron, a big heavy like that, because in a term like gods and monsters, like I don't think they would actually do a Blackest Night,
That said, though, the name Gods and Monsters does make me think they might go dark side.
Yeah, me too.
Because he's a new god.
Yeah, so
Can't discount
kind
that.
of monstrous. Yeah. So, but yeah, no, I like hearing about this with the True Detective vein, meaning that it's going to be a detective story and it's going to lean on them being cops.
Yeah, I also wonder.
Like.
I also wonder if that comparison is also maybe a suggestion they're going to play with the structure of it, and maybe it'll jump around timeline wise or something like that. I don't think it'll go as dark tone wise as True Detective, just because it's a superhero show. But
yeah.
That's just my thought.
And they did say it's going to feature Hal and John, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get both of them, and I'm sure we'll get some cameos from other Lanterns that we all like. Like I can't imagine not seeing one of the Guardians at one point in some form. Or Salak, at least his voice. So,
yeah, I wonder if they'll be sort of standoffish with that, since it's based on Earth and it's based with them doing detective stuff and it wants to be fairly grounded. I could almost see not seeing another single Green Lantern or a Guardian until maybe the very end, when it's like, okay, we're going to go back to report. Here's your tease for maybe the movie that's going to feature all the crazy stuff that you get with Green Lantern or something.
Yeah. Well, and also True Detective was kind of those two guys doing stuff on their own too, so that checks out with John and Al. Right, that's kind of every story that we read with them is them going against the Guardians' wishes and doing things their own way. So
yeah, so you got that, and then another movie again is The Authority. So this is one of the the edgier, weirder picks for one of these movies. Yeah. So these are Wildstorm characters, and they're incorporating them. They're kind of like a different take on the Justice League. What I think's interesting about this decision to have these is kind of like the narrative purpose for it, because they're telling this big story that there's supposedly they've got a plan, which I do appreciate that they said, hey, Lanterns is an important backbone to this overall plan. It feels like it is thought out, at least just from a paper read. I mean, we'll see how it feels when it actually comes out. But I'm optimistic about caring about this new universe when it all gets going, hopefully. Mm-hmm. But my thinking with The Authority is that, in the same vein that I was saying that Lanterns might set up the villain or something for like later on in the big grand universe, do you think they've got the Authority because they're going to maybe fight and fail, against something, and that's why we need a Justice League, is because the Authority couldn't take something out? I don't know. Maybe
I don't know. I'm not that familiar with the Authority. Like every time I jump into Wildstorm stuff, I learn something new. So this is kind of a blind spot for me. But one of the quotes that he said was, there are white hats, black hats, and gray hats. So meaning not everything is good guy versus bad guy. So this makes me think that maybe the Authority are that in between, we'll see what the in between looks like before the Justice League to see what they're kind of up against.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, so this has got Apollo, Midnighter, the Engineer, and Jerome Thorndike. Now, I don't know if this is a list of confirmed characters for the movie, or if this is just them listing the known characters from the comic.
Who those characters are.
But it's not a ridiculous assumption to think that it'll probably just be them, maybe some others. Back to TV, Paradise Lost is a HBO Max show, and it's going to be a Games of Thrones-ish story on Themyscira. And it'll be set before the birth of Diana, and it'll be all the politicking and stuff on Themyscira, which sounds interesting.
I would read a comic of that if that's what Historia is. I'm missing out, because that sounds interesting.
I think what's interesting about this, and the only slight asterisk I have in all this announcement, is that it feels like they're still trying to maybe tailor it slightly to the old movies, in that maybe they're still going to somehow retcon Flash's movie into being the change thing that
a flashpoint,
that creates the new universe. And honestly, I the Flash movie has me really sad, because I'm not looking forward to it. It doesn't really feel like a Flash movie. It feels like this weird concocted multiverse thing just to do everything but an actual Flash movie. And Connor's optimistic. When I talked to him about this yesterday, he was like, well, he's not optimistic about the movie, but he's optimistic that if it doesn't do that well, but they still think Flash is popular, it could end up with us getting a Wally Flash at some point in the new universe, which would be great. My skepticism comes from, or my sadness comes from the fact that I think that it's kind of tainting the character between just the production problems, the actors' nonsense, and all that stuff. I'm just worried that the Flash as a character is just going to be like avoided for a long time, and that's a shame.
I don't know, because a lot of people still think of Grant Gustin Flash, you know, and that hasn't done too much damage, I would think. So that's still out there at least.
Yeah, but that show's not good though. It's actually actively bad most of the time.
Still, it's not the same issues that this production had, which I'm still surprised it's coming out. Like, I'm shocked.
I just mean, like, the chances of them doing another Flash movie, unless this one does gangbusters, which will.
But even just, we know that they're going to do the TV thing, so maybe we'll get like a miniseries style, you know, Wally thing that sets up Wally that would lead into whatever. A phase two.
Maybe I'm just saying the entire like climate around it just feels iffy, and I don't like any of it, right? Yeah. And the reason why I'm bringing that up with Paradise Lost is that, like, this is being left fairly open in the sense that it could be the previous Wonder Woman that this is like set before, but it also could just be a new Wonder Woman. And given the fact that there's going to be a new Superman and a new Batman, I think you kind of need to have a new Wonder Woman as well, or it's going to feel really weird.
Yeah, no offense to Gal or anything. You know, just fresh. You know, we got rid of Henry. You know,
and honestly, like, my opinion, this has been the same for a while. Fresh slate.
Yeah.
Eradicate it all. Fresh slate. Yeah. It does make the next couple of movies that are coming out feel worthless. You know, like Aquaman 2 and Shazam 2 and whatever. But I don't care. Like, fresh slate. Like, this previous universe is just a mess and is tainted, and there's very little good in it, quite frankly. So
they And they're already kind of hinting, I was reading things, they're already hinting that Momoa wants to be Lobo. And, you know, he's already Aquaman in the universe. So, like, I feel like his days of Aquaman are, you know, behind him. He's, like, already looking at the new thing. So,
and that dude does... And his Aquaman was not good, so I'm okay with that.
I like him.
He's not Aquaman, though. He's just Jason Momoa.
Yes, I know. I was going to say, and then I got sidetracked. So, what was I going to say? All right, move on to the next thing. It might come back to me. Momoa, Aquaman. Yeah, go on to the next one. It'll come back.
Okay, well, next up, we're back to a movie, The Brave and the Bold. So this is an interesting one. It's obviously a cool title, but this is actually going to be the first glimpse of this universe's Batman. It's going to be a Batman and Damian story at its center. Grant Morrison's run, specifically Batman and Son, has been referenced, which I do like, that they're specifically saying, hey, this is the story that we're kind of adapting, potentially. Probably won't be exactly the same, because it's like presumably a younger part of the universe, younger Batman, all the rest of it. But they're doing Damian. That's kind of cool. And there's probably going to be other characters, because it's called Brave and the Bold, and that tends to be how it rolls. So this is also going to feature other members of the extended Bat family, just because we feel that they've been left out of the Batman stories in the theatre for far too long. That's very good, and I hope it doesn't skip any of them. Not that I think you can realistically give time to all of the Bat family members in a movie, because there's too many of them, but I just hope that the door's comfortably open so that any of them can and could exist as things go on. But
and the fact that Gunn described Damian as his favorite Robin, and that he's a little son of a bitch, in quotes, tells me he understands Damian, right? So
I'm actively excited for like a proper Bat family, and I think we're still getting the Batman Part 2, Matt Reeves movie, which I'm also excited for. But this one, since it's in the universe with everything else, this is the one that can have Mr. Freeze and Clayface and all the more fantastical and supernatural Batman villains.
Don't forget Ninja Man-Bats, all right? We can have that in this one.
We can, yes. So, by all means, this is a great idea. Batman Part 2, by the way, has been dated for October 3rd, 2025 as well. So we got that on the way too.
And he name-checked Elseworlds. Like, this is going to get Elseworlds branding. The Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson Batman. which I like.
That's interesting that they're going to try and use that phrasing in movies to say, here's what's in the universe and here's just what's separate and standalone. Yeah. I wonder if Joker 2 also gets saddled with an Elseworlds tag.
I think when he brought this up, I think that's one of the other ones. Because there's a different name to Joker 2. I forget what the subtitle of it is, but he threw that in with the Elseworlds 2, which this is something that I've always thought they should do. I feel like now that multiverses are pop culture and people can understand the differences in different things. Like, why not brand things Elseworlds? Like, they could have done this. I feel they could have done this a couple of years ago for things, but
but they didn't really. They couldn't have done because they hadn't really established what the main universe was, and it was all over the place. So you can only do this once you've actually got a firm universe in place and a plan for what is and what isn't part of it. But yeah, so very intrigued by this movie. They're saying this. Yeah, I think at the top it gave like an actual time frame for what all these were meant to be coming out in. It was something like 2025 to 2027. Yeah, 2025 to 2027. That's the exact time frame.
Yeah, because Superman's supposed to be out in July of 2025, and then Batman will be out in October of 2025. It says.
So. Which makes sense. I think if this all hits within about a 2-year period, it will feel probably quite concise, which is good. Next is a TV show, and it is one that probably made Matt's eyes pop out of his head, and that was Booster Gold, which the description here reads, it's a TV series about a loser from the future. That's all you need to know.
He is. John Michael Carr is not a good guy. That's why he comes to the past to make it big,
I don't know if Gunn's going to end up writing this, but I could see Gunn's sense of humor working for Booster Gold quite easily.
Easy. Just also the fact that there seemed to be a positive buzz from the social media side of things, where here I was thinking I was on an island being a Booster Gold fan, and come to find out there's a lot of Booster Gold fans out there. I just never knew. That makes me excited that the show will have some buzz when it comes out, and
hey, it might elevate him. He might become this good, not like a serious superhero tentpole, because he's too much of a comedy side character for that. But he might become like a very, cult.
He has kind of that Paul Rudd Ant-Man kind of vibe, right?
Oh I can see that comparison.
A lighter tone, more fun, So I'm super excited. So that. It's already going to be my favorite TV show. I'm already putting it out there. I
don't know. We were compared to Homelander yesterday, and just in the sense that he's like, I could see Anthony Starr playing Booster. He shouldn't, because he's already Homelander, and it's too similar.
But that vibe, when he thinks, there's a different of how he perceives himself versus how he actually is.
He's Homelander with hijinks.
Yeah.
That's my description of Booster Gold.
And he's not going to laser people's chests, because that's not one of Booster's things. Hey,
you say what you want, but laser my effing tits is still one of the best lines of dialogue in TV history.
But yeah, and then Skeets and just the inner balance between them, I'm sure that'll have Gunn's sense of humor throughout too. I'm super excited for this.
Yeah. Well, we don't know if he's writing it though. He may not be writing it.
Well, no, but like what you said, with his sense of humor, like that is prime for that vibe. The balance between them.
And the next one's kind of a surprise to me is Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, based on Tom King's comic. Now, obviously, we like that comic a lot, so this is great news. I like that this is based on an actual thing. I'm pleasantly surprised at this because I felt like, because there's a Supergirl character in this Flash movie that's coming up, and again, I have nothing against the actor or like putting the character in a Flash movie, but it feels like just one extra kind of like character too many in what should be a Flash movie. I'm actually really pleased that this is a fresh Supergirl movie that's given her a chance to really stand alone. I would not have expected a Supergirl project in the same slate as Superman, but obviously Superman's going to be the story of Superman fitting on Earth. We know that Supergirl story is true grit in space. This is going to be a space adventure. So not only is this going to give Supergirl a spotlight to hopefully become an even bigger deal and be up there with Wonder Woman as far as like the general public go for female DC characters, but you're also giving us a very different type of movie to Superman. You're giving us a very distinct thing, and it wouldn't surprise me if this is a hit and people like it. that Supergirl will become more associated with doing stuff in space than doing stuff on Earth, like a second Superman. Even though I like when she does that too, but I can see the appeal of trying to make that distinction. Say, no, Supergirl is going to go around the universe. She's going to do different things, whatever. A lot of potential in that. And the trade sold out on Amazon within a day of this announcement. So it's got some buzz going.
So very, very excited for that. Because that book had its, it was a roller coaster of emotions. So if we're gonna get that in a movie, I'm just thinking some of the vignettes that we got, like if they're going to adapt it all the way, and just seeing that on the big screen is gonna rock. Like, I'm very excited.
Yeah, so that's really cool. And then also something of a second or third chance is that they're going to do a Swamp Thing movie. And the best news about this is actually news that came out separately afterwards about who might be directing it, because James Mangold's attached to direct this after Indiana Jones 5. He, of course, did Logan, as well as other things in the past that have been very good. So he's a great choice. There's a direct references to this being based on Alan Moore's run, which is also very exciting.
Which is very, I'm going to have to visit that now, because that's been a blind spot for me for a while.
But sure, it's very good.
That one's very horror, like, rooted, right?
I said this yesterday on the TV news with Connor, but, like, I'll say it now. If they can capture the tone that book has in movie form, I will love this, and it'll might be my favorite of the entire slate. Like, if they can capture what that book felt like, I will love this.
I'm gonna have to track these down now, because I'm outside of like Watchmen and whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow, I haven't read a lot of Alan Moore. So this might be the time to remedy that. So
yeah, only thing I'll say is the first issue, if you're reading the collections, he kind of came in and finished like an arc that was already going. So the first issue is kind of a weird last chapter or something else you haven't read. So don't put too much stock in that first one, and then read after that.
Yeah, for sure. Because I do love the different version like of Swamp Thing that we've gotten. Like the Scott Snyder book, I really liked the places that it went. But I'm a real big fan of the Charles Soule. That essentially was him doing superhero stuff within the Green. Big fan of that run.
I mean, I think Ram V stuff did have a lot of influence from the Alan Moore side. So,
and I love that as well. Like so far in all my times of reading Swamp Thing, I've never been like, never not looked forward to Swamp Thing. Right? Like, it's always been a book that I'm...
It's so different from like most superhero stuff as well. Like, I think that's one thing I do like about this slate is you've got a couple
it's varied.
Yeah, it's very varied. You've got a couple of tentpole things. You've got a Superman movie and a Batman and Robin movie, effectively. They're not calling it that, but that's effectively what it seems to be.
Yeah.
But you also have a space adventure with Supergirl. You've got a more sort of like... Swamp Thing's this kind of like horror, like sad monster story. Authority's probably going to be more of a cynical, satirical take on superhero stuff. And even the TV shows, likewise, you've got your detective Green Lantern show. You've also got your sort of darker side Waller story about her doing villainous stuff. And then you've got, your Game of Thrones, Wonder Woman story, and then you've got your comedy Booster Gold. It's a very varied set of things.
Kind of like comics themselves, right? Like, that's what we've always wanted. At least I say we. But there's different comics out there, and they shouldn't all have the same tone. They should be able to be different things.
Oh, I really hope these have different tones. I will be so disappointed if like this Swamp Thing movie feels the same tone as the Brave and the Bold movie. They should feel different. One of the things that I think got really boring for me with the Marvel Cinematic Universe is just how it is the same tone pretty much constantly.
Yeah. For sure.
So I've fallen off that universe. The current DC movies, I'm not excited for any of the ones coming out. Other than I guess Batman Part 2 because I like the first one. But this slate, on paper, I like the sound of most of it, and I hope that it lands. I really do.
And I was already in on the Swamp Thing horror movie, and then they attached Mangold's name, and like I'm already excited. Like, I love Logan. Logan is one of my favorite, superhero movies. I would say even movies up there. Like, that movie hit all the right spots for me. So if he's gonna bring that kind of quality to a Swamp Thing movie, then let's go. Also, he made me care about car racing in Ford versus Ferrari. I don't care anything about cars. So like he did the impossible there. So I'm super excited for that.
Yeah, the TV show from a few years ago was really, really bad, but I will say Swamp Thing in it looked perfect. The actual design of him looked great. So if they keep that look, and then
who starred in that as Swamp Thing?
Oh God, I have no idea.
It wasn't a big name.
I don't remember if it was a big. I don't think it was, but I could be wrong.
Because this was the one that was originally on.
It was DC Infinite, and then it aired on CW, but it only got one season though.
Yeah.
So
I'm looking this up.
Yeah.
Virginia Madsen was in it.
Yeah, she was in it. It's one of these things where it feels like some of these projects are like genuine, like second or third chances for characters. Or in case of Superman, I guess it's like even more than that. But you know, characters who haven't really either gotten the right due. Like the Supergirl show obviously had some bright spots, but you know, kind of went downhill as it was going. Swamp Thing's had some failed attempts in the past. Like I kind of like that they're making serious efforts, seemingly, with some characters. And even the idea, like obviously Batman's been well served, and there's been great Batman movies, but finally trying to do a proper Batman with a Bat family and Robin and stuff like that does feel like, okay, we're going to actually try and do the things that haven't been done yet. We're going to try and do the parts of DC Comics that you love in the comics, but no one's really tried to capture successfully on screen yet. And that has me optimistic, and I hope these projects work out, and I hope they're good. So,
for sure.
Optimistic. I'm optimistic. You know, it could all crash and burn. They could all end up sucking, but I am optimistic at this juncture. Okay. Well, I guess that'll wrap up the news. So, okay. All right. Well, I guess we'll talk about comics then. We got a couple of new books to talk about. The Flash 1 Minute War special by Jeremy Adams and a bunch of artists, because there's 4 chapters, so we'll bring up the artists as we go through.
As we go.
So yeah, this it's basically just a series of shorts that tie into the current storyline. This tends to work better when it's more focused like this, because it's you know, because the first story, for example, is a bit of backstory on the enemy, you know, the faction, and where they come from, and there's how they develop technology that tapped into the Speed Force. They don't call it that, you know, they just call it this energy source, but and how they became greedy and they built all this technology, and but it took a lot of resources, so they had to start like sort of stealing Speed Force energy from other worlds. And then eventually, when they found a speedster, because they need technology, they need suits, and they need like tech to like do all this.
And it seems like it's a big deal too, right? Like the suit that the original guy used to get powered up is a very Doc Ock-esque. Like there's, you know, these tubes and stuff that run to him and whatever.
Well, but what I was getting at though is that's why they call speedsters organics, because speedsters can just do it without technology. Like they're connected to the Speed Force. So when they first found a speedster on whatever universe they're in, on whatever planet they were on, it let them tap into the idea of the multiverse, and that's when they started going around and doing this. And you know, it says that at first they only went to worlds that were about to die, and they'd get what was ever left. But then they got more greedy, and it kept you know, snowballing.
And the idea that their world was not unlike ours at the beginning. There's a lot of, you know, analogies to Earth and whatever, and we see their Empress in shadow constantly, so I'm sure there's going to be some type of reveal. Yeah,
she's got this veil on. In fact, the main guy, Vel, here in this story, who was the first guy to use the tech, he's like, yeah, I'll go and conquer all these worlds for you if you agree to take my hand in marriage, kind of thing. And she agrees, even though this is like a faux pas for him to do that. So he's been promised that he'll marry the Empress when all these invasions are done. Although I suspect that she doesn't ever really intend to, would just be my guess.
I feel like the invasions will never end.
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling. So yeah, and that's basically it. So well, this is a series of like short stories, kind of like those Lazarus Planet things. I think I like this generally more because at least this first one, by and large, enhances the main story by giving us more context for the villain. This feels a bit more focused and well thought out, and probably part of that is because it's all written by the writer of the main story. It's not a bunch of different writers coming in to do all these shorts.
Right.
And they're all enhancing things. For example, the second story is how Avery gets involved in everything, because it shows that she was fighting this villain, and that's when they invaded. And she was one of the few Flash characters who wasn't in the main story. Like, all the others we sort of cut around her, we didn't. So we see her fighting this villain, whose name
who steals her soul.
Who steals the soul. She seems alright though without it. Well, she's going to get it back, I noticed.
And so what he's going to do is if he can get into the upper atmosphere, it'll essentially be doom for the planet. And so as she's fighting this guy, he takes her soul and absorbs it, and is going to fly up into the atmosphere. And then the fractions strike, he freezes, and then they take him, right? Which I'm assuming because they got some of the Speed Force energy off of her soul, right? That's why they were gonna take that guy. But they got to take him into space, so she has to hop onto the spaceship and make sure that her soul doesn't detonate, which I like. That was very fun.
Yeah. So it's mostly an action sequence. The art on this one is Serge Acuna. And it's basically her dressing up. She gets her soul back. She fights some of these soldiers from the Fraction, and that's pretty much it. The third story is actually, I'd say that out of the first two, I like the backstory for the villains more. I think I like the third story, maybe my favorite of the four, actually, because it's this little horror story where a few of the soldiers from the Fraction notice this big mansion, and they go in and they're looking around to see if they can find anything, and you see like this knife in the kitchen, like in the foreground, and it's like, oh wait a minute, what's going to happen here? And the soldiers start dying one by one, like we're in a slasher movie, and you're like, okay, who is it? And I was thinking Thawne. I was like, okay, this is an evil speedster. Who is it?
I'm thinking Thawne. I'm thinking Cicada, right?
Sure.
Like these people that have ties to the Speed Force, or maybe Savitar. Somehow they're. And was not guessing who it ends up being, which was nice. So
and I really like this one. It's probably my favorite art of the book, the issue. I'd say
it's very moody, like because it does feel like a horror movie. So they did a very good job. Yeah,
it's all suspense, it's shadows, it's the silhouette of the villain holding the knife, and then the last page, of course, reveals who it is, and it's Godspeed. Godspeed's back, everyone. So,
which I forgot where he went, but I know he was in trouble the last time we saw him.
I kind of love it because it's I just love the idea of like we haven't really thought about what are the evil speedsters up to during this 1 minute war, because that's kind of a big deal, right? The art here is by Lisandro Esterin, and it has like a sort of watercolor look to it, and it's really nice. Like I think it's a really effective little horror story. So I think the reason why this works really well, despite the fact that sometimes these like collections of short stories, I mentioned already that the main writer's doing all of them, which obviously helps. But I think the fact that the main story was cutting around the different characters anyway, this just kind of feels like a longer issue that happens to be split into 4 segments. So Godspeed's in the mix. That's kind of exciting. The one that feels the most kind of separate, although this is probably setting some things up for later stories, I imagine, from Jeremy Adams. Because the first story is called Past, right? And it's the backstory of the villains. The middle 2 stories are called Present, Part 1 and 2, so they're both taking place during the 1 minute war. This last story is called Future, and it's got art by George Cambadius, and it's set in the future, and it's Jay, Wally's son, grown up, and he's got complete control of his powers. The Fraction have shown up again, and he's controlling his powers well enough now that he doesn't freeze this time. And once he destroys their spire that causes everything to slow down, he's able to use his strength. But what this actually does is bring back a character that was introduced a little while ago, and that is Gold Beetle. And it sets up that Gold Beetle and Jay are, well, not a couple yet, but
they will be.
They're interested in each other. They kiss. There's a bit of a flirtation. They've met once before. Obviously, we see Iray briefly, who says she sent in a friend who knows you. I'm not gonna lie, I really laughed at, so her Skeets is more of a ship called Beats, and I really laughed at Beats giving her this big introduction before she appears. It's like she's like a wrestler and she's got like 100 nicknames, and let me just the Queen of the Quantum Realm, the Wave Rider Warrior, next page, the Tiara of Time, the Princess of Paradoxes. I'm not gonna lie, this was making me laugh. I was into this.
I loved all that because it does fit that Booster Gold, right? Because she's Gold Beetle. She's the fusion of Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, you know. So the fact that, of course, she would have all of these.
It's like Blue Beetle's ship combined with Skeets. That's what this is. Is those two things put together.
So
the art in this part was probably my least favorite of the issue. I think the faces were fine. I really didn't like the weird sort of like limbs that were going on.
The proportions were off in the action sequences.
Yeah, well, and it was very intentional. It was almost like I wouldn't quite say Riley Rosmo-esque, but it had this thing where it was doing like, you know, Jay's legs would be like stretched out over 3 panels, and it would just look really wonky. And I was just kind of like, I don't.
It wasn't sloppy. It just wasn't to my taste.
Yeah. I agree with
So,
that. Not to my taste.
Yeah.
But I did like the chemistry between these two characters, and it made me wonder. Oh, I wonder how this is going to be brought back up later, because it's obviously not going to naturally just come up in the main story. Like, this is going to be another segment in the future or something.
Yeah,
I'm
sure because we've seen Gold Beetle. That was when Barry was bouncing around, right? Or was that that was Wally?
It was when Wally was bouncing around. We met Gold Beetle. Yeah.
And so we met her, and she seemed to know a lot of things, and they were hinting at it. I also thought we were gonna get Jay's superhero name. I'm still waiting for that. You know,
he probably hasn't picked it yet, which is why it's not.
yeah. But so like, I thought this would have been the time to reveal it, right? Because he's older in the future. He's probably early 20s, you would guess here.
Well, it gives us a year.
Yeah. What does it say?
I'm pretty sure it was more than that.
Okay.
Now, admittedly, that doesn't mean that he's older. I just mean that we can't judge it based on the year.
Oh, no, he has it. He's still Surge, right? It's Irie who we don't know her full.
Oh yeah, that's right. Good point. Yeah,
that's right. He's Surge.
Yeah. So. Oh no! Sorry. I read it as the year 2920.
Yeah.
He says action log 2920. Yes. So it's just that's his log entry, not the year. Never mind.
Right.
Never mind.
Okay.
So yeah.
I also like that she's like, so do you keep a diary? Like, because he's talking about the flashbacks and whatever. He's like, it's not a diary, it's an action log. Like, I just thought that line was also very funny.
It's not a comic book, it's a graphic novel.
Yeah, exactly. So, he's very much related to his dad that way. You know what I mean? There's a goofiness to Jay that I like. But yeah, no, it's Irie. I thought we were going to get Irie's name because he didn't call her Flash or anything.
No.
But yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed this by and large. If anything, the Avery story is probably my least favorite because it was the most straightforward, but it was still fine. But I loved the horror story of the third one. I thought the backstory added a little bit of layers to the villains. So this is essential. This is essential for the trade, I would say. Like, I think you need to put this in.
Oh yeah, this is just chapter 3 at this point.
Effectively, yeah. It's like an interlude chapter, but it is a chapter.
Yeah.
And the final story, I really like the characters in it, so it makes me excited to see them again at some point in the future.
Yeah.
So, I would say this is a very, very worthwhile add-on to the main Flash book. I wonder why they didn't call it an annual. Maybe just because there was already an annual, or there's going to be an annual later in the year. Be.
And I mean, just the 1 minute war special works as well, versus an annual.
No, I don't really care. I'm just debating that usually they would just call this an annual and just put it out like that. In fact, there was no annuals this week for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But because usually there is in a week 5. But
yeah.
Hey ho. All right, what are you giving the Flash 1 minute war special?
I'm gonna give this a solid 8.
Yeah, I'll agree with the 8. I think obviously the stories bounce up and down a little bit, but I would say overall it averages out to about an 8.
Yeah, I'm also Jeremy Adams' Flash run is becoming one of the special ones for me right now. That it really has to go out of its way to be bad for me to give any lower because I just enjoy reading them.
And I had to convince you to catch up.
You did. It wasn't something that I was. I feel as much as I love Josh Williamson, I felt like I needed a break. I took that break and then I missed the Flash because the Flash has been my consistent. That was one of the first books I started collecting when I started reading comics again. So. But yeah, no, it's feeling like one of these special runs that we'll talk about, the Adams Flash run like we do with Wade and Johns. So, and this is just adding more to it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I think it's felt that special early on. I was enjoying it. It feels like it's escalating and getting better though recently, which is good. Which means a lot of groundwork was laid and it's starting to really pay off, which is nice. So yeah, that's the Flash. DC Power, a celebration. Obviously, this is the special put out for Black History Month. So it's largely obviously black creators writing black characters. There is a reprint or two towards the end, one of which I didn't realize was a reprint, and I read it because I hadn't read it before.
Yep.
The final story is a Joe Mullen story, but it's actually just an excerpt from issue 5, I think it said, of her Green Lantern book, Far Sector. So I didn't read that one because we literally did it back when it came out. So, so you know, it's hard to complain too much because it's still like 70 pages in your stuff, but worth mentioning there is a little bit of a reprint thing going on at the end. So yeah, we'll get into it. First story. After a break, there's a nice foreword actually by John Ridley. I don't know if you read that.
Yeah, and it's anytime someone starts questioning about them adding superheroes for representation, I'm just gonna point them to this, because the way that Ridley explains it with, growing up he loved Superman and Batman, but they didn't look like him. And then they started to get heroes that looked like him, and it meant the world to him. And then it brings around to the point where he gets to write these characters now, and then he gets excited to show his son, these new characters. And his son's kind of like, yeah, but like, where's the one that looks like me? And it's just this thing that, you just got to keep trying harder. And, representation is about people, finding themselves in the characters as much it is just putting the characters out there and making them relatable, as if, Ridley had related to Superman and Batman as he was growing up. So anytime someone starts complaining about that, just be like, hey, John Ridley wrote this really nice thing. Maybe you should read it. Maybe get some, what's the word I'm looking for? Not context, but
Perspective
on this, but it doesn't help that John really does have a way with words. I mean, the man's been nominated for a bunch of awards when it comes to writing, so not surprised.
So first up, we got an Amazing Man story written by Evan Narcissus and art by Darryl Banks. So this is from Squadron? No, All-Star Squadron.
All-Star Squadron.
Yeah.
Now, Pete, if you had a guess about me, did I go on a deep dive on Amazing Man?
Of course you did. You looked up a bunch of history on this character.
100%. So once we get through talking about this, I will talk about almost that Amazing Man is this lost character in time. And I feel like a lot of these DC characters that popped up around right after World War II were much bigger deals, and for whatever reason, kind of got lost to time. But
well, I think this is maybe my favorite story in the whole book, and I think part of that is because it had to sort of set up. Maybe it's because I don't know the character that well, so it was actually quite interesting learning who he was and what he was about. But also, I really like the art in this story. It feels very I don't know.
It feels of the era, but not from the era. Right?
Honestly, it looks a little bit like I wouldn't quite say it looks like Fornes, but it has kind of that quality to it, right? I could see this being set in the Watchmen universe or something and fitting in there. But it's about this character, Amazing Man, who can turn his body into any material he touches. And what it deals with, because it's set after World War II, is the idea that he went off and he fought for the country and all the rest of it. But now there's this anti-Cape sentiment post-World War II, so he's hiding along with a lot of the other superheroes. But it ties into, obviously, there's allegories, of course, to black characters coming, I say black characters, black people who were in a war, came back, but weren't treated as heroes like everyone else was. They were just kind of forgotten about. And this story deals with the fact that the government want to knock down a whole black neighborhood so they can build a highway and things like that. And we get this villain who's just this KKK style guy called
Klan robot.
Yeah, called All American. Yeah. And effectively the story is about the fact that this is Amazing Man by the end is going to decide that he shouldn't be hiding and he should still be trying to help and save people and stop bad guys.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have to hide because the world is making him feel scared,
Right. Is that he should be, standing up for other people regardless. And so because what he does, he says that he picks up a bunch of jobs, and it's kind of like the Incredibles, right? Where Bob's not supposed to be doing superheroing anymore, but he can't help himself when people need help. So like, Amazing Man is a driver, and when he sees stuff going wrong, he still gets involved. And that's how he comes across this All American guy who just looks like a clown. Like,
yeah. So All American in like the original stories was a robot, and it's referenced here. But there's this new guy that's got like an All American thing, and he's using like our man's like dust.
The Miraclo, the Miraclo pills, which ties into a story where he stopped using them for a Ray because he was getting addicted to them, and he lost a stash of them in Detroit. And this guy came across them, and so Amazing Man. I also like that because he can absorb whatever he touches, he takes on those properties. So think like Colossus becomes steel, the organic steel. Well, Amazing Man can do that with bricks if he's touching bricks, or he keeps a brass key, right, which is close to his skin tone enough that he won't stand out.
That's his stealth tactic, is that maybe people won't notice that I've turned into metal if it's similar to my skin color.
Yeah, so he keeps this brass key with him, and he transforms and fights this guy, and it was all just this really good post World War II story that also puts American history at the forefront, because like Pete was talking about, there's all these stories that these guys went and fought a war, and then when they come back, they get treated like like they're not equal, and they were just as equal on the battlefield, so which also ties into stuff that Tom King's talking about in the Gotham City year one story, right? So so here he decides he wants to use his power for good again, and also he really is looking like Luke Cage here at the end, which maybe a different color sweater here at the end instead of the yellow and the bald head, right? But so this led me on a deep dive of the character, and I'm like, how come we don't hear about Amazing Man more, right? When we get brought up on all these World War II heroes, and going through these articles in the comics in the 70s, they had treated Amazing Man as one of the like people that spoke up for Black rights. In the DC universe, Amazing Man is only behind Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. So like he is a big deal in universe continuity as being this guy that stood up for rights. And I think like whatever writers are writing right now, start incorporating this stuff back in there, because I like that. I like when the DC universe has this alternate history, that's similar to ours but just a little bit different. And having a character like this that, came back from the war, and even though the society doesn't like him, he's still going to stand up for it, because he knows in his heart what's right, and he's going to stand up for people like him.
He has to keep fighting no matter what. That's kind of the
and
lesson.
So just this again made me and I already like the World War II heroes. There's a pulpiness to them, but throwing them in the real world scenarios here and having him fight I know he's not a robot, but the Clan robot did really crack me up, because it was a robot that was wearing a hood, but yeah, and just seeing him up there with the rest of the All-Star Squadron with Liberty Bell and the original Jesse Quick, and those characters shouldn't be forgotten. I shouldn't be having to do a deep dive right after I read this. He should be up there, like when we talk about the original Mr. Terrific, right, and the fair play whole thing, we should be talking about Amazing Man in there too. So, and I'm glad this story showcases him as much as it does.
Yeah, no, that was probably my favorite of the book, just because I got learned about a new character, and it was probably one of the more well-rounded stories in that it told a story. Like there was a clear beginning, middle, and end, where it was like, okay, he's hiding, but he's going to ultimately decide to come out because he should. It felt like there was a nice arc in the story, so it felt really full-formed, which is really nice. Next up was a Black Lightning story, written by Lamont McGee and art by Crisscross. So this is Jefferson's at a meeting where they're talking about metahumans, and they want to segregate the metahuman kids because they're prone to violence, as the one guy puts it. And obviously the allegory here is quite straightforward. This
Yep.
is talking about the separation of kids, and the story's called Separate but Equal.
Yep.
And Jeff says, that's always bullshit. That's never true. But while this is happening, the school is attacked by what appears to be some metahumans, although the twist later on is that it's actually regular people with technology who don't like metahumans, who are trying to pin it on metahumans so that everyone thinks they're dangerous. But obviously Black Lightning suits up and goes out and fights them, and eventually his daughters show up as well and help out, so this ends up being like the whole trio of them. So we get Jen and Anissa there as well. And that's pretty much it. They win.
And it's also it also opens on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which was this key event with Martin Luther King, where he led a march across the bridge. And in fact, that's what the movie Selma really focuses on, because it also opens with Selma, Alabama, and this whole idea of separate is never equal, right? That you can, by the fact that you're separating them means that you're saying that some people are worth more than others. And it uses here the
Xavier.
Well, with Xavier is he wants to,
I was just cracking a joke.
Yeah. But with the whole separate and equal thing with Black Lightning too, is the man's an educator, right? And here in the United States, one of the court cases we learn about in school is, the Plessy versus Ferguson and Brown versus Board of Education, which established separate but equal. And then one of them established that separate is never equal. So just the fact, too, that you have this educator using this and speaking up for other people.
I mean, I think in general, Black Lightning's is most interesting when they use the fact that he's a teacher, because it's a really unique profession for the alter ego of a superhero. Yeah. It's always more interesting when they use that as part of his character.
For sure. So, also, I forgot that his one daughter's name is also Lightning. So you have Black Lightning, Lightning, and Thunder. And I feel like we need to get her a different name.
No, it doesn't work when you say it like that. If you say Thunder and Lightning as a pair, it's quite easy and it works.
It does, but it's also Black Lightning and Thunder, which is why that daughter was given that name. But then the other one now it's Lightning. I don't know. Just let's get her a good name.
It's Black Lightning and Thunder and Lightning. That's that's how you say it.
Yeah.
It's easy. It works.
So what happens when Thunder's not there because she's back in college and it's just Black Lightning and Lightning?
Lightning squared.
There you go.
That's killer. So I mean, this one's enjoyable enough. I like what it's hitting that story wise. It does. I mean, once it becomes the action scene, though, it is just kind of a typical short story with the action. But I do think the start of it is really good, and kind of the overall point of it's solid.
Well, and I like some of the images that Chris Cross does here with them. So like you have this during the fight scene, when we see Thunder and her whole thing is she can grow her mass and hit hard. You get her, breaking stuff and teaming with her dad and sister, and it looks very dynamic in places. But in other stuff, it looks very posed, and it seems to be lacking that energy, But overall, I think the art's fine.
Yeah, I didn't like it as much as the first story art wise. No. It's definitely a very clean art style. But yeah, so next story is Nubia, Queen of the Amazons and Bumblebee, which is called The Queen, the Bee, and the Symphony. So this is written by Stephanie Williams with art by Aletha Martinez. So this is weird. So this is Bumblebee as in the Titan Bumblebee. And her...
also they're leaving her husband out, who's Boy Blue, who's also a superhero.
Yeah,
who's also featured.
Yes, Well, yeah. Well, her husband is putting on like a symphony that he's written, because obviously that's a big part of his characters, his music.
Yep.
And they've invited Nubia to come see it. So the actual story of this, for the most part, is the two girls spending time together, and like Nubia trying on some like quote unquote man's dresses. And what I mean by that is dresses made in the man-made world, which she's very impressed by. So they're basically just having a girls' day, and then Mala and the Brain show up to ruin it because they try to kidnap the symphony so that the Brain can get a special like private performance.
Yeah, it was. So I love this the dynamic of the monster Mala and the Brain, but the fact that it was so Brain can hear the thing, it was like there was this bittersweetness to it. that I enjoyed. So, I will say on the art here, if you would have told me this is Lupacino, I wouldn't have second guessed. It's very similar to her style. Very clean lines, especially with the ink and the coloring. I'm sure that goes a long way to similar. But yeah, I think the art was pretty good.
Yeah, art was solid enough. I think the story here, we're getting into this sort of anthology, the pitfalls of, just like you basically have a setup and then you have a fight and then it's over. Like that's basically like all you have. And it's a random enough pairing. I don't know if these characters are associated with each other. I've never.
No.
But whatever. It's cool.
No, it worked, and the fact that Nubia, has a soft spot for music because she was, the guardian of Death's Door, and that she taught herself the harp while she was there, and then so at the end, they asked her if she can play harp as part of the, for the symphony. So I thought that was all nice. They made the pairing work pretty well.
Yeah, nothing really else to add. Next is a Green Lantern story, obviously about John Stewart. It's called Keeping the Peace by Brandon Thomas and art by Natasha Bustos. So we get to start with a flashback as John as a kid being bullied, and then we learn that this is him sort of reliving this memory, and he literally puts his like bad memories in Green Lantern boxes and compartmentalizes them, which is kind of funny. But he's basically dealing with this peace negotiation between this like warring alien, these two warring alien races on this planet. And they want to try and get peace because there's like another enemy potentially that might come and wipe them out. So they're fighting and bickering, and it's only when eventually they're seemingly attacked by this third party that they decide to finally stop fighting and start actually solving their problem and deciding what their peace treaty is. And it works. And the little twist of the issue is that this attack that was made to look like this third party was actually our young Kelly, Teen Lantern, in space, who was firing this beam down. And this was John's ploy to make them work together. Because he says that the only thing bullies really respond to is a bigger bully. And that makes them... So
The Trillions were coming, and he does a good job making it look like a death ray, which I did. I loved all that stuff. But this flashback got super dark that I wasn't ready for. The kids beat him up. The bullies beat him up enough that he got put in the hospital. Yeah. And John wants to go back and basically try to tell young him, don't do this. But then he also kind of at the end he comes to terms with the fact that that kind of made him who he is. It's one of his core memories because he will stick up for others.
Well, that was the key part you left out, is that he got beat up because he was sticking up for someone else.
That's right. Yeah. All right. And so, he's in the hospital, and then this whole idea comes from him reading War of the Worlds while he was in the hospital.
That felt like a meta thing to me. It was kind of like him being influenced by what he reads is kind of like a, hey, wink, wink, because, kids are reading comic books and maybe we'll influence them kind of thing. There was like a sort of like, Ouroboros kind of idea to that.
But yeah, the memories in the Green Lantern boxes, right, would make me... But then we just had a whole issue of Human Target where that's a crux, right? That they keep records from the rings in this top secret room on Oa. So, it ended up working. I did like the art here because it did feel... There's a cartooniness, but in a, kind of in that Bruce Timm kind of style, almost. Like very clean lines.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting Teen Lantern to be involved in this, so that was actually a nice little surprise.
Yeah.
That he's including her in this. I don't know, it was just kind of nice, because she's like probably one of the newest characters in the whole book. It was just nice that she gets a little bit of showtime. Sure. Doesn't get a character bio page like everyone else does, I noticed.
No.
Oh, technically that is Black Lightning. I thought that was weird. You get to the end of the Black Lightning story and it's just Thunder and Lightning who get the bio, and I'm like, I feel like they were...
Jeff... We don't need to know about Jeff.
What the hell? Yeah, weird. Anyway, next up we got Aquaman and Kid Flash. Obviously, this is Joe, I always mix up Aqualad's name with the animated series name. Yeah. Which was Khalid. Calder. No, Calder. Yeah, Calder.
Yeah, it's Calder.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's Jackson.
That was Jackson. Yes, I always mix those two names up. Anyway, so this is Wallace, and it's him dealing with this idea that he doesn't feel like he's worthwhile, that everyone around him, like, oh, we got the discount Flash, we didn't get the real Flash, or even the real Kid Flash. You know, so a lot of this is his inner worries that he's not even the first Wally to be a speedster and be Kid Flash. You know, Bart's the one who really is owed the name. You know, all these worries. I wasn't super into this story because I didn't really understand why Wallace got really aggressive with with Aqualad. I genuinely thought that he was affected by something, and we were going to find out by the end that he was like made angry by some mystical thing or whatever.
Yeah, no, and it wasn't. It was he got put in such a bad headspace that he decided he was going to try to fight his friend. Which, granted, I've been there, right, in real life, but I don't know if I want to read that in a comic, right? So I liked all the discount Flash stuff because I mean, sometimes Wallace feels like the leftover Flash, and I feel like there's been enough stories now that he has proved himself, at least to me as a Flash fan, that I like having him around. Like him and Wally's dynamic recently, where Wally insists on calling him Ace, even though he doesn't want to be called that. You know, it adds to their whole thing. But once he shows up and he gets mad at Jackson for leaving the Titans, even though everybody left the Titans. I don't know. There was just
it felt really forced that he got angry and started fighting Jackson. So that just kind of made me not really get into the story at all.
Yeah, if he was under Thinker's, thing, like he wasn't seeing things properly, right? He's just leaning into his anger and whatever. But they don't go out of their way to tell us that at all. Right?
No, I mean, they revealed that Thinker's there and he was the villain entity that was acting suspicious, and obviously they take him on at the end. Mm-hmm. And he was probably what was making him feel so, paranoid and worried about like who he was and his value as the Flash. Mm-hmm. But it felt like he just started fighting him immediately, and I don't know, it just didn't quite click for me.
No,
but so anyway, that's that. This is the I don't think I said the creators on this one, did I?
No.
This one is Dorado Quick and Jordan Clark writing with Clayton Henry on art. I will say I usually don't like Clayton Henry's art. I do think his forehead problem wasn't that prevalent here, so that's a plus.
Because he's covering Jackson's up with all the hair, so we don't get distracted by the 5-head here.
And Wallace's mask kind of covers that part. Maybe that's why we don't have the forehead problem.
But no, the art's not the problem in this one. Like I like all of that. Because the fight scene is even though I don't like the fight scene, it looks good. Like he uses, the kinetic energy of Flash with Aqualad really well. And then the scene where Aqualad hits him with the bioelectricity, kind of to snap him out of it, looks really good. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I think I get what it was going for. I get that it's going for Thinker influences him and makes him paranoid and thinks that he's not worth anything, and that makes him fight Aqualad. But I feel like it's so rushed, and I don't think there's enough time to really establish that enough to make it work.
It's the rush aspect too, because you also got to remember his dad was a Reverse Flash too, so there's also that little part in there. And I wish they would have spent more time on him and Jackson bonding over the fact that their dads are both these big time supervillains. Well, not so much that version of Reverse Flash, but Jackson's dad's Black Manta. That's his mentor's main enemy. So a little bit more on that and less of them like fighting because Wallace is upset by his own thoughts. But
ends with a kid wanting Wallace to sign something, just to let him know that he matters to someone, that he's got fans, that he's influencing people and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
because he's opening, did we say that he's opening like a youth center?
He's cutting a ribbon.
He's cutting a ribbon, and so, but the kid coming up and asking him if he wants to race, he's like, I could be the Flash one day. I'm the fastest kid at my school. I thought that was all super cute.
Yeah, next up we got Cyborg. This one's written by Morgan Hampton and art by Valentine DeLandro. And I assume this is the team that's going to be on the book, because at the end of it, obviously, it gives you a tease saying this is the miniseries that's coming in May or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I got to be honest with you, I actually think that I am kind of into this miniseries after this short story.
Me too. I was not expecting the silly catchphrase of Booyah to hit such an emotional part. Yeah,
so this is probably my second favorite story in the book after the Amazing Man story. It's I really like the art, actually. It's got this really kind of I don't want to compare it to Foreigners again, but it has that really sort of flat colors, you know, sort of like style.
Yeah. So this artist also did the backups in one of the Future State Batman books with Mr. Miracle.
Oh,
When they were
okay.
doing they were doing the Shiloh Norman stuff. And
I can, I can see it actually. Now you said that, I can compare it in my head now. Yeah.
And I just remember that name because that name's very, very, it stands out. So, but yeah, no, I was like, oh, Booyah, like, and this, you know, I get it that came from the cartoon, the Teen Titans cartoon, and you know, it's not really part of Cyborg's character. They made it work here, and they made it work really well. So.
Yeah, well, they're doing this thing where he's protecting this new fancy energy source, which apparently comes from Ryan Choi, and which is you know, the atom, the modern atom, for anyone who's not keeping up to date with that. So this is him protecting that. He's talking to the two security guards that he's in the van with. There's some kids playing baseball or whatever outside, and it sets up this idea that it's the anniversary of his mother's death, which obviously is a big part of his origin because she died in the lab with him when he became Cyborg. Right. And he's like watching, like in his like eyepiece, he's watching like their favorite sitcom, which they watch together. And so it's okay, this is setting up some of his backstory and some of like his more emotional connection to it. And then Livewire shows up to try and steal this energy source because it's like she's got this hunger for, you know, energy, and this might sustain her forever kind of thing. So Cyborg, you know, tries to get away with it and runs, and he gets knocked out or whatever, and he's like sort of has this sort of conversation in his head with his mother, where she gives him a bit of a pep talk. Yeah, and what was she says to it? So, something about how he's like both powerless and super powerful, and that's kind of important to like who he is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, and because
he says
it establishes that, you know, she's the one who would say, "Can I get a booyah?" and then he would fist pump her and say booyah.
Right, because that was from their favorite show that they watched together in the afternoons when you get home from school. But yeah, so he says, "I'm a hero. People need me, but I never chose to be this. I feel so powerless." So it's all about, you know, him not wanting to be Cyborg again, which I heard that I was like, oh man. But then Mom reminds him, he's like, well, no, this is who you've always been. You're always Victor. You're always gonna come out of this stronger. And then that's where it snaps him. He's like, oh yeah. And then they do the booyah, and then he wakes up, and when he hits Livewire with it, when he makes the, you know, the cannon, the booyah is so satisfying.
Yeah. Here. And then Livewire grabs a kid, and the kid's got a hearing aid. The art points that out. So it sort of does that, because Cyborg's got narration, but then there's like a second type of narration, which is like his computer system, just sort of like it tells you what he's doing. And it says that he's scanning the ASL database, and he signs to the kid who's got the hearing aid to throw him his baseball bat, which he does, and then that's what helps him save the day. And and you know, gets to know says hello to the kid at the end. You know, I actually really liked this. I thought the art was great. I thought the emotional connection to Cyborg's mom, I thought landed. I've read a few lackluster like issue ones of Cyborg books that haven't really worked for me. Start of the New 52, Start of Rebirth, and they've been okay, but they've never really felt like that made me want to read anymore. They always
fall into the trap of him, is he a man or a machine? And what I liked about this is that it leaned into that he's just Victor Stone. Even with all the electronic stuff, at the end of the day, he's still Victor Stone.
See, here's the thing. I don't even think it's a problem. If they give me a good man or machine story, like, I love science fiction, I can totally get into that. I just don't think any of them have ever quite landed for me. So, but I mean, I was going to try the miniseries anyway, but honestly, I feel a lot more optimistic about it after reading this.
Well, and the art's going to be Tom Rainey. So same writer. Same,
okay.
Where'd it go? Morgan Hampton is the writer. Tom Rainey is the artist. So, but yeah, and
that's a little bit of a shame because I really like the art in this. But hopefully, Tom Rainey. I
like Rainey's art enough. It's been. I think we read Rainey in which was it? It was one of the Green Lantern books. I remember. So.
Okay.
But yeah, I definitely felt the same way. It's weird that we lined up like that, where I was not interested in the Cyborg book at all, but then after reading this. And, you know, the emotional spots that it hits and just the tone of it, and, you know, him being in Detroit still and wanting to be part of the community. and again hitting us with that booyah and it meaning so much to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, they made it work. Morgan Hampton made it work.
Yeah, next we got a Vixen and Batwing story, written by Chuck Brown and art by Peterson Oliveira. So that's one of the ones that I wasn't as into. It's just kind of there. It's Batwing and Vixen are on kind of a date, although she's protecting her king or whatever.
A king of one of there that she's friends with.
Yeah, but they're kind of on a date. They're flirting a little bit. Bad guys show up. They use their powers and fight. Black Manta being the main bad guy. But it's mostly just a bit of fighting, and then at the end, they kiss, and she flies him up out of the sky with her powers and kisses him. That's really all it is. I don't have a whole lot to say about it.
No.
I mean, I guess this was established. I wasn't reading Batwing back when it was a book, so I don't know if this Batwing Vixen relationship was something that was already
like it didn't feel forced, but I also didn't want to read it. You know what I mean? Like I don't.
Oh yeah, I have no problem with it. Like, the relationship's fine, whatever. If you want to put them together, put them together. But I just didn't really care that much about the story.
No, yeah, me too. It was Black Man is defeated, but says, as long as I'm around, the contract's still open, and I'm coming back. And I was like, all right, well.
And I get why you want to put Black Manta in one of these stories, because he's obviously also another prominent black character in DC.
Right.
Maybe in the Aqualad story would be a good place for him.
Yeah.
But that was more of a Kid Flash story guest star in Aqualad though. So
right.
I don't know.
But it was fine. There's nothing. This definitely felt like an annual story, or like this also could have been in the romance one.
It felt like just a short story, an anthology book for better and mostly for worse.
Yeah.
And then next up. So that's the last of the news stories, actually. But I did read the next one because I hadn't read it before.
Yep.
So this is from Batman Black and White, issue 3 from 2021. This is a John Ridley Batman story with art by Oliver Coipel, and this is the Cavalry. So this is obviously Jace Batman, and he's basically tied up in chains, and he's been beat up by these like white supremacist villains, and they're basically saying, "You're not the real Bat." They're basically getting like oddly, weirdly, like protective. You're taking Batman's job, even though these are bad guys who Batman will beat the shit out of the first chance he gets. It's like, why are you taking ownership over Batman?
Well, because all they care about is his race. They don't care that he's, Batman's not black to them. So therefore,
I mean, no, like absolutely, I get the point, and I just there's like a weird absurdity to the logic of them. I just, and it's very realistic. I'm not critiquing the book here for getting something wrong. I'm saying that I believe this to be the case if you apply it to real world context. I'm just saying that I don't understand.
So you're telling us that you think that white supremacists aren't the brightest bulbs?
Yeah, I'm going to say something controversial. I'm going to say something controversial, Matt. I think white supremacists might be bad uns. I'm just going to throw it out there.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I don't know what that word. I've never heard you say that word.
What, bad uns?
Yeah, is that a Scottish slang thing?
It's actually more of an English term. It just means bad ones.
Okay.
If they're a bad un, they're a bad one.
Gotcha. I don't know if you're calling them like bollocks or whatever. But. I love
bollocks is a different word. Bollocks is testicles. What are you talking about?
Yes, I know. But you could say that they're bollocks too, because But yeah, there's nothing I like more in media than a dumb white supremacist, because it points out how stupid their philosophy is. And so here, the fact that they get so upset over Batman being not a white guy.
There's a weird like satirical irony to it.
Yeah.
It's like, but Batman will beat the shit out of you anyway. Why does it? Why does it matter?
Right. Yep. So, but also like they're called the Igloo Boys, which again, if you pay any attention to that whole vibe, which I do over here, because it affects us more. There's a group called the Boogaloo Boys, and there's a whole reason they call them there. But the fact that Ridley takes the piss out of them here, by
yeah, it really annoys me that supremacists have tried to like. Now Electric Boogaloo, which people usually just say is a joke because it's the worst movie sequel title ever, has been taken by supremacists and now has this hidden meaning from them.
Yeah, because that comes from the idea that there's going to be a second Civil War, and the joke is it's Civil War II Electric Boogaloo, which led to them calling themselves Boogaloo Boys, or they were calling it the Big Luau, hence why they were wearing Hawaiian shirts in this. So again, Stephen Ridley is someone that is, or John Ridley is super. Stephen Ridley was a football player, not to be confused with this writer. John Ridley is very in on social movements. You can tell just from this, and stuff to it, and so yeah. So just the fact that they're in the Hawaiian shirts and all this other stuff tells me he pays attention as much as I do to this stuff. But but yeah. So
I mean, the big thing with this story is just the art, really, because this gorgeous black and white art, the fight scene plays out. Because I haven't read most of, like, I read the start of the Ridley Batman stuff, but when the ongoing started, I kind of fell off it quite quickly.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that he had a sidekick, so when this sidekick shows up, I was like, who's this? And then it wasn't until the last few pages where it reveals that it's his little sister, and I went, so it's I remember her as because she was in the book already as a character, but obviously she's become his little Robin-esque sidekick.
Yeah.
So she ends up bailing him out, and they go off on their bikes. So
I like the fact that she asks if they can use guns, and he says no. She's like, yeah, but it'd be so much easier if we could. Just her dynamic there. But yeah. Also, so reading back through this, right, we get a Batwing and a Batman at the end of this. I did not realize that Jace is meant to be Lucius's oldest son, but he's also, they don't have the same mom. That this is Luke's half brother, and that
was one of the things that opening the foreword mentioned, is that later on he revealed JC's mother, which actually did create. So when he showed this character to his son, the son said something to the what was the word he used? Blasian, I think. So
Blasian,
which I assume just means half black, half Asian. Would be my assumption. I've never heard it before, but I assume that's what it means. So apparently that's what Jay says now. Now that it's been revealed that his mother presumably is of Asian descent.
That was all. I just thought I was missing something. I was missing a different a reaction to that, because I did read that. I remember reading that in the foreword, but I thought that was just a conversation he had with his son, that there was no Blasian superheroes.
So clearly at some point he's revealed that JC's mother is whoever.
Gotcha.
So I enjoyed this story for the art. It was it was really pretty. If nothing else, the characters bounced off. They had that brother sister dynamic going quite well. So it was solid. So I mean, overall, as far as these anthologies go, this one's relatively good, because it has, I'd say, 2 stories that I really liked, a couple that were decent, 1 or 2 that I wasn't so keen on, and then there's a reprint at the end. Technically there's 2 reprints, but I hadn't read this one before, so I read the Batman one. But
I remember talking about it probably with Connor
probably
on here, because I remember us having the same conversation about the Igloo Boys and how they were penguins. Ridley makes them penguins crew that got together to do,
which works obviously because it's part of his shtick.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So I just assumed you had read it too, but no. Upon the reread, it still holds up, even though it's a 2-year-old story at this point. It's still all lands, all the character stuff's still there, and again, never gonna be mad at black and white Coipel art. Like, it's real pretty to look at. So, it's a win.
I want to make a movie that's like about like a diverse group of characters and call it Eclectic Boogaloo.
Why'd you give that away for free? Edit that. Edit that out.
I'm a genius.
Yes.
I'm a genius. All right. So that's actually the wrapping up of the new books. So I've got some Patreon books to look at. American Vampire issue 29. So this is one of my Patreon books every month at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. One of the higher tiers, you can make myself a corner, read a book. So last issue set up that Skinner was working for the VMs, and him and Pearl are going to investigate the Hollywood elite that might be hiding vampires in their mansions or whatever. And the start of the book is a lot of Pearl reminiscing, because this is the first time she's back in Los Angeles since she made a vampire back in the 20s. And she goes up to this mansion with Skinner and talk to this rich producer or whoever he is, and he's all very suave. He's got a martini in his hand, and as they're talking to him, he's been very friendly and forthcoming, but he's like, I need to go feed my cats. Come and help me feed the cats. And he takes them out back, and then it turns out his cats are actually a big cage full of lions. And he throws in some meat, and then opens the gate, and that's when a vampire shows up. Because all throughout this, like, Pearl and Skinner are like, "Can you smell anything?" It's like, "No, there's something fishy, but I don't smell any vampires." But eventually, a vampire arrives in a cloak because it's daytime, so obviously hiding from the sun. And fight breaks out. Pearl goes after the vampire while Skinner stays back and deals with the producer dude who sets his lions on him. So we get Skinner Sweet punching a lion in the face and then kicking a lion in the face. So a lot of fun action in this issue. Pearl goes after the vampire. And what's interesting here is that when Pearl goes after the vampire and throws like the chauffeur onto another car with her super strength, she grabs the vampire, pulls him out into the sun. She has a one-liner where she says she's tanning. But the producer says some very ominous things about knowing who Pearl is and knowing who her husband is, and that that he's going to be in danger. So it really sets up kind of like, this is really kind of like, Henry's on his last legs, because Henry in the last issue, of course, was attacked and is in like a comatose state in the VMs. The back half of the issue, though, after they've killed all the lions and stuff, is Pearl being like, "All right, Skinner, fess up. Like, why are you working for the VMs? What's going on? What have they got on you?" And he doesn't really want to. He doesn't want to offer up the information. He doesn't really want to talk. So she goes back to the VMs and gets an update on Henry, who may wake up, but it's unlikely. So she's feeling very down about that. So she asks this new agent, like, "Okay, what's going on with Skinner? What blackmail material have you got on him? Like, why is he working with you?" And this is when he reveals that they've actually got like a device that's implanted in him that can release gold dust into his blood. So it can release different types of dust. So for our different vampires, it would be their weakness, but for him, it's. And I know you want to make a wrestling joke, Matt. I can see it in your face.
I'm just saying. Gold dust was also Booker T's weakness. That's all I'm saying.
Right. So yeah, it's revealed that so they've got this device, and this is how they're controlling him. But the reveal at the end is that the local vampires, the one who got away, and it's like, okay, what, because when they were talking to the producer, like, there was a sniper who shot at him right before he talked. And so we hear them say, "Why didn't we just kill Pearl and Skinner when we had the chance?" And the vampire's like, "Trusting your sire." And the art here in this last couple of pages is gorgeous, because the vampire who's speaking in charge is all in silhouette, and you've got all the vampires in their cloaks listening to him. So they think they're protected in the VM fortress, but we're going to take them out soon. We're going to blah blah blah. They're going to be torn apart by who she's going to become to trust, and it turns out that Skinner Sweet is with these vampires. He's working with them, and we see there's a big cut on his chest, which maybe suggests that this device has been taken out, that maybe they've taken out for him by cutting into his chest. Maybe it's just the scar of where it was put in. I'm not sure, but lo and behold, we can't trust Skinner. Are we shocked? Are we shocked that we couldn't trust Skinner Sweet? That maybe, just maybe, he was going to betray everyone, or at least they're teasing it. Maybe they'll swerve me, and Skinner is actually going to end up siding with Pearl. But I mean, at this point, it's hard to believe or have hope for that. But yeah,
Skinner's gonna Skinner.
Skinner's going to skin her.
No, Skinner's gonna eat. Skinner Sweet's gonna Skinner Sweet. He's just going to do whatever the best case scenario for Skinner's going to be. And if that's helping Pearl, then it's going to help Pearl. But if it's getting himself out of there without, that's what he's going to do.
So, yeah. No, enjoyable issue. Some fun action. Good art, especially towards the end. Yeah. I will say, this arc is fine so far, but that Lord Nightmares mini that was before this was so good. It does feel like a bit of a step down, but it's only because that Dracula arc was so fantastic that this just can't compare yet. But we'll see where it goes.
Did we talk about, was it on here? Did we talk about how I believe that Bill Paxton's character Near Dark inspired Skinner Sweet? And I'd love to ask.
I don't think you brought that up.
Yeah, so watching Near Dark for the first time a couple weeks ago, and I forget his character's name, but Bill Paxton is probably the best part of that movie for me.
I don't think that's not. I mean, you don't like the movie as much as you should, but even people who love the movie, most of them will say Bill Paxton is the best part of it. Most people will agree with that.
Just his entire vibe.
Finger licking good.
Yeah. Just his entire vibe reminded me of Skinner Sweet. And I would love to ask Scott Snyder if there was a little bit of that in there.
There's a moment.
And I know those characters are kind of an archetype also of kind of the bad boy out for themselves type, but there was just a whole vibe that Paxton had to the character.
There's a moment early on where they're all trying to pick up victims and he's hitchhiking, and there's a moment where he sort of like slicks his hair back and puts his thumb out and puts on this fake smile. It cracks me up every time I watch that movie. It's like he's putting on his friendly persona to lure in victims. He's so charismatic in that movie. It is unreal.
Yes, Paxton is great.
Your Dad's great. Top 5 vampire movie, easy.
There you go. But yeah, it's a movie.
I expected you to fight me on that, but all right.
I'm not going to because we differ so much on vampire stuff. So, you know.
I like trash like the Lost Boys.
I like Lost Boys and you do not. So, and I'd much rather watch Lost Boys again than Near Dark ever again. So that's just me.
Near Dark's got Tangerine Dream music though. It's so good. It's hypnotic. It's great. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, that's all. 8 out of 10, I think, comfortably, but not reaching the same heights as that previous arc, I would say. And then next up, so I'm going to be doing Batman and the Outsiders, the 80s run, but that kicks off with a sort of preview that was part of the extra long Brave and the Bold issue 200. I'm just going to talk about the Outsiders story in it, but that's what this is from. This next thing I'm going to talk about. So. This was basically this is kind of like how they obviously had the book launching soon, and they put in like a story that's setting it up or teasing what that book was going to be in Brave and the Bold 200. So it's a fun little story actually. So it's it's set in a hospital, and it starts with Jim Gordon talking to this criminal that they've got padlocked to the hospital bed, who wants to kill himself, and that's why they've got him chained up. He's like, free me and I'll finish the job with you. But and they're protecting the hospital. They don't want anyone to get to him because they want to take him in and prosecute him or whatever. And this issue is effectively this gang of this guys like sneaking in. They've got like a medical supply truck that they come out of, and they're all dressed as doctors and nurses, and they shoot the security guard or the cop that's outside doing, protection detail or whatever. And they're all coming in, and they all put their fists in the air and say, because the bad guy's name is Miklos, and they all as Miklos wills, and they all put their hands up in the air. So they're very loyal, and they try to get to him so they can break him out and kill him because that's what he wants. And the issue is effectively how each of the outsiders are introduced one by one. So first up, we've got a nurse who doesn't understand what the bad guy's saying or what this other doctor's saying to her, because he's like trying to say, hey, let's go to the Clash concert. How about it, baby? And she basically sort of goes, wait, Clash is a conflict. How can it be a concert? And I'm not a baby. A baby's an infant. I don't understand. So obviously I'm like, okay, clearly this is not a human character. This is a character that doesn't understand how humans speak. So this turns out to be Halo on the next page, with their very tricolor outfit. And one of the bad guys has got a flamethrower. I think it turns out to be Firefly actually, but he's not in the Firefly outfit. He's in like a white doctor's outfit, just with a flamethrower pack on. But he's like firing stuff around, and she's trying to like protect people, and then that's a couple of pages, and then Metamorpho comes in and puts a big like bell shape over him, so that when he tries to fire his flamethrower, he just makes himself go puff. Yeah, so it's a fun time, and then there's other villains going around, and maybe my favorite of the reveals of one of them being an outsider is an old granny with the oh, it's actually not. It's like a trolley she's got. I thought it was one of those walkers with the 4 legs you see some old people have. But this old lady's not an old lady. It looks like an old lady, but then the face comes off like a mask. So I don't know how good this mask was that she was wearing, but this is Katana, who is pretending to be this weak old lady, who then starts beating up one of the bad guys. And then Black Lightning was pretending to be like a janitor or something, and he like slips into his costume. And this is 80s Black Lightning with the more jumpsuit looking outfit. So we're definitely in this era. So fun stuff with all these characters fighting. It's basically a lot of them dodging bullets, and I think Katana's sword fighting with someone, and you even get a little like moment where her sword speaks to her. So it's setting up all these various things, and Batman shows up outside, and we've not seen Batman yet. He just shows up outside quite late on in the story, and basically it all escalates when one of the last bad guys, who was dressed as a cop, shows up in the room with a bomb strapped to his chest, and Batman and all the characters introduced so far are there, and they're like, try to stop him. And outside we see one final character be introduced, because we see the explosion come out of the window of the hospital, and this character outside reveals himself to be Geoforce, and he uses his powers to sort of stop all the debris that's coming down on people. And and then we go inside, and he's like, oh god, I hope no one got hurt in the explosion. And it's revealed that Metamorpho shielded everyone with a big solid structure.
Yeah, whatever he did to transform himself.
So, I mean, there's not much to the story. It's fundamentally just a roll call of here's introducing each of the members of the Outsiders one by one, and that's basically it. And then at the ending, Gordon's like, wait a minute, Batman, is this some kind of, new Justice League? And he's like, no, Commissioner, and I'm not in the Justice League anymore either. This is the Outsiders, and we'll be here when you need us. And that's basically just all it is. It's a roll call, and so it's Mike W. Barr and Jim Aparo doing the book, and they are the creators on the main book as well. So this is very much just a roll call of who the characters are going to be in the team, and it is fun though. Like I even though I vaguely know who the team is, just because I know who the Outsiders are, it was kind of fun piecing together like the tease of Halo, and then Geoforce out of nowhere towards the end. It is kind of interesting which characters are still in Outsider stories and which ones have kind of like gone away, because Halo and Geoforce aren't really in the modern Outsiders, but Black Lightning and Katana still are.
Yeah, so when I think of the Outsiders, I usually think of Black Lightning, Katana, and Metamorpho.
Yeah,
those are the ones that I always see, and usually Katana. Like Katana's the one that I always associate with the Outsiders, like because the first Outsiders team I ever read was it was Nightwing's team right after Infinite Crisis, right after the Teen Titans. So it was made up of like half Titans and Katana, basically. Was them. And so but like Halo, I'm not that familiar with, but Geoforce, I feel like he hasn't been around for a long time now. So it's not just him not thinking of him as an outsider, but just like him as a DC character, I feel like
wasn't he in the Death of Ra's al Ghul stuff?
Yeah, he ended up being the one behind it, but up until that point, like he wasn't really.
Yeah, but that was pretty recent.
Yeah, but again, from the time, I can't remember for him showing up. Like I remember them using Markovia. Bendis used Markovia a lot for that, for his whole who was that? Leviathan stuff. And I kept expecting, Brian to show up there, but yeah, so no. Halo, what is Halo's power? Is she do stuff with light?
Yeah, when she was definitely firing rays around, and she seemed to be flying. So I mean, Halo, I'm not super familiar with Halo as a character, so I hope that I get a bit more of like her backstory once I get into the series proper.
So I can't remember if she's an alien or not, because like you're saying a lot of stuff where she's like interdimensional.
It definitely sounds like she's not from Earth, at the very least, from this issue. And the art's very much of its time, but it's really solid though. It's very clean, very straightforward to watch. There's like a sequence where Black Lightning sort of like flying down a hall and sort of dodging like gunshots, and it's just pretty solid. Yeah, I'm excited to read this because, like, I've always wanted to read more kind of stuff from like the early post-Crisis and like Bronze Age era, and this is kind of this is early. This is before Crisis. This is like a couple of years before Crisis, I think.
Yeah, I want to say it's like 79, 80.
No, it's in the 80s. It's like 83, 84.
It's 82. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Why did I think why did I think the Outsiders went all the way back?
I don't know. So this is like because New Teen Titans is right at the start of the 80s as well, so that'll be a few years into it by this point. And I've always wanted to read more comics from this era. They are a little bit more dense, take a little bit longer to read. They have a bit more descriptions in their panels and stuff. But and because I grew up on modern comics, they feel really dense to me versus like what I think of as a traditional comic reading. Like, but yeah, I'm excited to read this run though. I'm excited to get into it and read this part of DC history that I've not tackled yet.
Yeah, during the pandemic, I got the New Teen Titans issues that introduced Starfire, Beast Boy, Cyborg, and Raven. And they weren't poorly written, but they were written of a different era. So when you're talking about the density of them, oh my goodness, it took forever
I've
to read
read
them.
the start of the New Teen Titans run, and I do want to go back and read the whole thing.
Yeah.
But the issues do take a while to read. They are very dense for what they are. So the only thing I'll say, this is not to do with the quality of the issue or anything. For some reason, because it took me a while to find this, because it's in the collection, so there's like 3 hardcovers that collect the whole run of Batman the Outsiders, and this is included in it, which is good. But for some reason, it's between issues 3 and 4 in the trade. So I had to I looked up is it there, and it said it was in it, but it wasn't at the start. And I was like, where is it? And it was actually weird. It was like the user reviews on Amazon. One of them mentioned it's there, but it's between issues 3 and 4 for some reason. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's helpful. So I went and found it. But yeah, why it's there and not at the start, I don't know. Maybe the first couple issues are actually going to form the team. So the idea is this takes place after that. But I figured I should read this first because this is how it was presented first. This was the tease before things kick off. So
the chronology of it.
But yeah, so that's the story from Brave and the Bold 200. So next time I do one, it'll be issue 1 of Batman the Outsiders. There is an issue of, I want to say, New Teen Titans that slots in somewhere. It's in the trade though, so I'll just get to it when I get to it. But yeah, so there is like 3 nice hardcover collections that collect them. I'm reading the digital trades obviously because that's how I read books now. But yeah, so there you go. So that would normally take us out of the part of the show where we pick our favorite stuff of the week. And we could do some of it, I suppose. We could do panel/moment. We can pick art, and we can pick. Well, covers a bit pointless to be honest.
I would say unless we're gonna open it to all the covers, because as you were talking about American Vampire, I was looking at the covers.
Oh sure.
Unless we're gonna, because there's some good ones for
I mean, I don't think there's any point in ranking the books, to be honest. I think honestly it's panel/moment of the week in the best art, because you can pick any of the stories from Power to pick. So okay,
do you want me to go first?
Yeah, panel/moment, Matt, go for it.
All right, so I really want to pick the Godspeed reveal from that story, but if I could, I would pick the entire Amazing Man story because of what that led me down.
You can't. I mean, okay, we'll stretch to a couple of pages, Matt, but an entire story is a bit.
I know, because what I want to say, because trying to find a moment from there as a top moment, because the whole thing was good, but I will pick the scene where he punches the Nazi robot and it turns out to be a guy, or the Klan robot, because that's just good. You got to punch Klan robots.
Yeah, that's good. Rule. I think I am going to go with Flash. Not the Godspeed reveal though. I'm going to go with that story, but I'm going to go with the first time you see like someone holding the knife in silhouette. It's just like I got excited. I was like, oh, like who's this speedster who's got a knife that's going to kill them? Yeah. I just I got a cool vibe from that. I was into it. And then best art, I would probably go with the Cyborg story in DC Power.
That one or the Amazing Man, I thought was really strong. But I also was a fan of the art in the Godspeed story.
Yeah, the art in the Godspeed story was good too, actually.
It was pretty good too. So, but if I'm picking, it's probably going to be the Amazing Man story as well.
Yeah, I'll go with the Cyborg story. I really like the art in that one. Yeah, I don't think. I mean, we could rank the stories in the Power, but
Yeah,
I don't really know.
I feel like for what that book is trying to accomplish, representation, maybe ranking them's not right.
It feels a bit weird. It feels
yeah,
a bit
that's
weird.
just me. Like,
so yeah, we'll just forgo the usual format of that. I think this week, just because it's a weird week with two books, and they're both anthology style books, and it's, I don't know, it's a bit odd. So we'll just leave it at that, and I will tell you what's coming next week from DC Comics. So obviously we're into the February books now for this next week. So coming up, we have Batman 132, we have The Flash 792, we have Poison Ivy issue 9, Batman the Joker, The Deadly Duo issue 4, The Joker, The Man Who Stopped Laughing issue 5, Gotham City Year 1 issue 5, Lazarus Planet Next Evolution issue 1, Monkey Prince issue 11, and Scooby-Doo Where Are You 120. So yeah, still a quiet week for me. I've only technically got 3 books looking at this list.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the Lazarus Planet Next Evolution for some names. And we do have a Ram V story in there.
Oh, really? Given that I've only got 3 other books, I might give it a whirl then.
The writers on this one are Chuck Brown, Brandon T. Snyder, Ram V, and Delilah S. Dawson. So, there's that. Okay,
I don't want to promise it, but I might look at it since I've only got 3 other books. Because I've only got Batman, Flash, and Gotham City Year 1.
Yeah, I have Batman, Flash, Poison Ivy in Year 1. So, and Monkey Prince. So maybe not. We'll see.
You've got a couple more than I do. So
yeah. And time has not been easy with work lately. So, trying to fit them in. But it makes me read before bed. So finding time then.
Good, I guess. Yes. But yeah, so we'll do what we can. I mean, we only had 2 books this week, and we ended up being a 2-hour show anyway. I mean, thanks to the news more than anything, but good stuff.
I can't just bit my foot and it hurts real bad. I didn't realize she was under there, and I moved my foot, and then she was like, "Oh, I'm right here, a-hole." Oof.
It's your fault. You deserve it.
All right. Oof.
This is your fault for being barefoot, Matt. That's what that is.
I'm not barefoot. She bit through my sock.
All right.
I didn't realize she was right there, and I moved my foot to stretch, and I think she thought I was trying to kick her. But no. All right. I'm good now. God, that hurt though. All
right. This has been Comics From The Multiverse episode 342. Did I say that at the start? I think that's what I said.
Sure.
So thank you very much for joining us. Of course, worth pointing out, this is actually DC related, but over one of our movie shows over at Male Fuzz Movies is the Collector's Cut, and we worked through franchises and subgenres and things like that. February's theme or franchise is the Ninja Turtles movies, and so the first episode just went out of Ninja Turtles, the 1990 movie. But the reason why I'm bringing it up, I mean, obviously I like to promote the other content we make anyway.
Yes.
But specifically in this case, the bonus episode, if you're a patron, is the Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated movie. So that might be of interest. Myself and David talk about that. And the short version, it was a pleasant surprise, actually. I thought it was pretty good. So if you want my full thoughts on that, you can get that as a bonus episode over at Patreon. If you want to support all the content and get some goodies, including early access to this show at the $5 tier. Whenever it's ready on the Saturday night, I'll put it up. So go and have a look and see if you want to support the show that way. But click on all the links, share us out, rate the podcast on your podcast app. All these things help us out a lot. And of course, one of the higher tiers is the producer tier, so I will thank our Patreon producers right now for the month. Thank you for Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Board Now, Christopher Moy, David Brown, and Al Treisman. And thank you to everyone who supports us in any way, big or small. All of it does help. So thank you very much. And that is the show. That's Comics From The Multiverse. Thank you very much once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep reading comics, and remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.